welcome to Bold Schoolers. Having a positive mindset as opposed to one with lots of negative self-talk and working towards a mind that's calm and open can set the stage to slip into flow. That state where thoughts fade away and there's no active inner voice. Because our brain is constantly filtering incoming data from our senses, a positive frame can help the brain to pick up optimistic bits of information rather than focusing upon all that negative stuff out there or being overly skeptical. Negative self-talk is constrictive, whereas positive self-talk is expansive. Start to train grit by helping kids reframe towards optimism. When optimistic, we believe that something good is going to happen, that it's all going to work out in the end, even with realism in the present. In an expansive state, kids can develop the attributes of being flexible, creative, persevering, and resilient. One way to build positive frames is to use a reference point. A reference point is a positive moment in a child's history that can be revisited again and again. A child's prior successes can serve as a reference point when feeling overwhelmed, and a child can use previous wins to fuel future efforts. We own our power and our strength in the recollection, and we're then able to confidently apply those qualities and abilities to the current situation that we're managing. Being able to self-regulate emotional state is a big part of being able to persevere when goals are challenging. We not only persevere physically, but also mentally. Negative mood not only limits the amount of novelty that we notice, which is that good stuff out in our environment that makes us pay attention, but it also shuts the door on creativity. I often talk about the little voice in our heads when I talk about reference points. And there's just this great opportunity to start a practice of looking at that inner voice, whether you're an early age child, whether you're a middle-aged child, whether you're a high school child, it doesn't matter. Now is the perfect time to start paying attention and getting some awareness around that inner voice. Recently, when I met up with a group of 6, 8, and 9-year-olds, I asked them about their inner voice, and they did not even hesitate to respond. At the time, I thought, how cool is that? You ask a bunch of adults about the voice in their heads, and you might even get some denials. It's just not something that we typically talk about. I think it comes from the idea that we deny that voice in our heads because it's related to mental illness or something like that. But that's not true at all. We all have little voices in our heads that provide a daily monologue to our lives. I think we're missing an opportunity with our kids if we don't talk openly about the little voice and check in frequently as to its messages. Many of us as adults have our own broken records, as they're often called, that play in our heads over and over. When we hear that, we usually think of negative messaging that follows us from childhood into adulthood, and then plays on until we do the work to reprogram the little voice. Well, my thought is, why don't we stop the negative voices in the beginning? This is an upstream practice that can have a huge positive consequence downstream as your child grows. When I talked to that group of 8 and 9-year-olds, I heard the coolest things. Some of them said, yeah, when I get stuck, my little voice says, you can do it, come on, let's go. And others said, run away and hide, you can't do it. Even at that young age, they had very powerful positive and negative messaging. So what do our kids tell themselves and why? I know when my own kids were young, they were incredibly sensitive to my energy. If I was angry and simply turned my head to look at them, they would start crying. It was like an invisible wave of negativity would tsunami them. I didn't look angry on the surface. How could they even tell? I think kids are not only highly sensitive to energy, but when they're young, they're still attached in some ways to our parental energy. They are us. They haven't yet separated to become their own person yet. So perhaps in my flawed actions, I sent negative messages or judgment or disapproval to my kids. Perhaps they heard negative messaging from friends, other family, other group experience. Who knows where it comes from? And perhaps it comes from everywhere. Even ourselves, as we compare ourselves to others. But the bottom line is that it exists. It's there. And if we don't bring it into the light, those negative voices will hide inside of us, playing their destructive messages all of our lives. You have an opportunity. Kids know all about the voice in their head, and those that I've asked had no problem talking about it, both the good and the bad. We certainly don't need to make kids wrong for any negative voices. The kids in my group that said their voice just wanted to run away and hide, we acknowledged that feeling. And other kids said that, yeah, they felt like that too sometimes. And then another kid would offer up what she does when she feels that way. And the first kid would listen and thankfully say, he'd try that. Yes, we can work with our own kids to gently move these voices to the positive side. But I think there's power in the peer group to understand how it feels and offer up some love, understanding, and ideas to move forward. I challenge you to start a conversation with your child about the little voice. Not when your child's up against a challenging task, not when they're frustrated, but just take it off the taboo table and bring it into normal conversation. If you'd like to raise your awareness, clearing the path to optimal learning, come join us in Bold Schoolers. Check it out at boldschoolers.com. Be aware of how you speak to yourself. Are you your best advocate, your best support system? Be clear, not belittling, toxic, or unhelpful. It doesn't have to be positive hype. It can absolutely be real. I'd love to hear from you. What's the messaging you get from your little voice?